Well, hi everyone. Today I'm going to cover the tragic building collapse that was under construction in Angeles City, Philippines. This occurred in the early morning hours of May 24th, 2026. Apparently, the workers were sleeping in the building when this collapse occurred. I'm going to cover what we know so far today and what the likely key aspects of the investigation as to the cause of this collapse will likely focus on. As of the date of this recording, I'm recording this June 4th, 2026. There have been 24 confirmed deaths. There were about that many people that were rescued in the immediate aftermath of this collapse. But you can tell from this footage I'm about ready to play here that the Philippine authorities were completely overwhelmed by the scope of this rescue and recovery effort. The AP had some very striking footage, really profound, because they just recorded video footage with just background audio, and you just hear how essentially deathly quiet the whole scene is. And then you have the contrast with birds chirping in the background, and you just can't imagine the tragedy of all these people that were trapped and ultimately were unable to be rescued. You could tell that the Philippine authorities were just completely undersupplied, understaffed, and I think this would have been a much better outcome had it happened in the United States or Europe. But in a country like the Philippines, the scope of potential rescue and recovery is unfortunately very limited. And as I mentioned, that footage was recorded on the day of the collapse. They subsequently mobilized more people and more equipment, but it was mostly a futile effort. Now, this is the location of the building that collapsed on the island of Luzon in the Philippines. We'll zoom into this particular neighborhood in Angeles City. Now, this location is about 50 miles north of Manila. A little bit west of this building location is the former Clark Air Force Base. Mount Pinatubo in 1991 erupted and dumped so much ash that largely destroyed the Air Force Base. No doubt the United States government would have rebuilt this Air Force Base, but the welcome mat was retracted by the Philippine Senate, so the U.S. had to pack their bags and subsequently left Subic Bay Naval Base in the Philippines as well. But this Mount Pinatubo was only about 10 miles west of Clark Air Force Base, which is again just a few miles west of Angeles City. Angeles City really grew up around Clark Air Force Base. Now let's go back to this neighborhood where this building collapsed. It's rather congested. Generally, the main areas of investigation for determining what could have caused a collapse like this of a building during construction would focus on, say, the design, the construction materials, the workmanship, and the methodologies used for construction. Now, there's an article in this Daily Tribune that was questioning the design of the building columns that suggested perhaps they may have been undersized. Too soon to say. Here's some images from Google Street View. The building that collapsed is under construction just to the left of this photo, past the Cebu sign. You see it's about 3 stories tall at this point. The building was permitted for 9-story construction, and apparently they were building a pool at the 10th floor level of the building when this collapsed. I don't know that these columns are undersized. There's certainly a lot of them. So obviously you can't just go by size alone. You have to look at the number of columns and what the loading that was required for each of the columns and what the reinforcing details were, what the strength of the reinforcing steel was, what the specified and actual quality of the concrete was, and so on. Another issue in these types of collapses could be whether there was adequate support for newly placed concrete floors. We've seen that with say, the Hard Rock Cafe in New Orleans that collapsed. It appears that there was inadequate shoring or temporary shoring to support newly placed reinforced concrete floors. Now, whether it's fair or not, whenever you hear a story about a building collapse that was under construction anywhere in Asia, the early question comes up was there China government involvement, Chinese contractor, Chinese government financing, and so on. And at this stage, it appears to be a Philippine owned construction company. And the building owner has been reported as Ernest Jackson Lim. So that's about all we know at this point. I think there's already been some wrongful death civil lawsuits filed against this building owner. So we'll see how this story develops. But it's an utter tragedy to say the least. And I just can't imagine the relatives of these construction workers that were waiting for a hopeful rescue and then later for an eventual recovery of their loved one's body. I mean, it just has taken days and days just to get to this point. So I'll continue to follow this story. I think there'll be no doubt more accountability applied in this situation, even with the possibility of local corruption. It's just too massive of a disaster to sweep under the rug. And quite frankly, I think we see more accountability for situations like this in Asia than we often do in the United States. I'm still bothered by what I think is a lack of adequate accountability in recent collapses in the United States with, say, Surfside Condo or the Florida University pedestrian bridge collapse that killed a number of people. It just seems like, to me, these situations tend to get covered up in lawsuits and settlements and non disclosure agreements. And quite frankly, I don't understand why there aren't more criminal suits pursued in these cases in the United States. But I'll continue to follow this story as the news develops, as we learn more about what could have led to this tragic building collapse. With that, I want to thank those of you who've contributed to buy me a coffee. That's one of the better ways to support this channel. I also want to thank the channel members and those of you who've contributed to Super Thanks, additional great ways to support the channel. So stay tuned for future videos, everyone.